Now, folks, after this week's massive blow for Rishi Sunak at the Supreme Court over the government's Rwanda plan, the Prime Minister has pledged to bring forward emergency legislation to designate Rwanda a safe country and block judicial review into the plan as in order to actually stop the boats. However, many Lords fear that the House of Lords will encumber the bill with endless amendments, essentially wrecking the bill and delay the whole process through parliamentary ping-pong, meaning flights couldn't take off before the next election, as Sunak has, of course, repeatedly pledged. It's one of his top 5 pledges. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has criticised the entire approach, saying there's no chance of Britain stopping the boats within the current legal framework, and her supporters are asking what more drastic measures could the PM take to get this over the line. Well, joining me now is the political commentators Charlie Downs and Nigel Nelson. Hello to both of you. Nigel, I'll start with you first of all. Do you actually reckon Rishi Sunak has got a hope in hell of getting this through and getting this done by the next election? Because, 20 points behind Labour in the polls, it ain't looking too promising for a key priority for Conservative voters, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, certainly the priority for voters is the cost of living crisis. That's followed by the NHS. That immigration comes some way down on their concerns. No, I don't think Rishi Sunak is going to get this through in time for the election. I mean, even before we get to the House of Lords, who are sure to rip it apart, he will have a problem getting it through the Commons. That certainly moderate Tories in the One Nation group, like Damien Green, are against what he's doing. And the reason for that is, as the former Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption says, that you can certainly change the law. What you can't do is change the fact. What Rishi Sunak wants to do with this legislation is simply change the fact.
Yeah. Well, Nigel, do you think then a lot of Tory, especially those who are supportive of Suella Braverman, are saying, look, until we leave the ECHR, actually this is all a redundant conversation because actually it's human rights legislation that'll ensure that the Rwanda plan could never ever get off the ground, so to speak?
Yes, I mean, certainly that it is on human rights grounds that has caused the problem. The difficulty is, I mean, if you talk about leaving the European Court of Human Rights, that means we are abandoning our international obligations. We'd also have to leave the Refugee Convention.
All right.
And the other problem is that the European Convention is enshrined in the Good Friday Agreement, so that gets torn up too.
Charlie, I want to put that to you then. Do you think actually people are being irresponsible and abandoning our international commitments and potentially throwing Northern Ireland under the bus by wanting to leave the ECHR?
Well, that's the interesting thing about this story is it's actually not just the ECHR that has prevented the Rwanda plan from going ahead. There's I think there's 7 other pieces of legislation and various conventions that are stopping it from happening. And if you look at the dates, this is the interesting part of this. If you look at the dates when a lot of this legislation was passed, it's all post-1997. It's the Human Rights Act of 1998. It's the Immigration and Asylum Act in 2002. The Nationality Asylum and Immigration Act 2004. All of these various word salad pieces of legislation passed under in the new Labour regime. And I think that, the Supreme Court itself, people act as if the Supreme Court is some sort of venerated ancient institution. It was formed in 2009.
Yeah,
it's creation of New Labour.
I mean, Charlie, a lot of people are saying, especially viewers, getting very, very frustrated, saying, look, I don't care about our international obligations at this moment. What I care about are the rights of people in Britain to feel safe and secure and have border controls. Do you share and have sympathy with that argument?
I absolutely do, because, the people who have been involved in blocking the Rwanda plan from going ahead had no problem, or rather, let's frame that slightly differently. The law that's being proposed by Rishi Sunak to deem Rwanda a safe country is being, called like, we're going back on our obligations, and it's, it would tarnish our reputation in the international community. But these people had no problem when a state of exception was declared for COVID. If ever there was a state of exception necessary, it's over an issue like illegal immigration, which is actually one of the most pressing issues of our time. That being said, I think another important thing to note is the way in which this conversation about illegal immigration and the Rwanda plan is taking focus away from other issues that I think are just as, if not more important, such as legal immigration.
Yeah, well, net, 600,000 last year?
On track for over 1 million this year.
Incredible numbers. Nigel, how much of a conversation is this going to be within the Conservative Party itself? Because, I don't wish to make you be Mystic Meg, but I wonder to what extent will this follow not just Rishi Sunak, but actually whoever may replace Rishi Sunak in the event of a leadership election, for example?
Well, it is a totemic issue. I mean, what is going on in the Conservative Party at the moment is a civil war for the heart and soul of it, which is essentially a battle between the right-wingers on the backbenches and more moderate Conservatives. Now, what is astonishing is that this battle is going on in government, should be supporting getting things done, rather than opposition. But it may be, for the sake of the future of the Conservative Party, maybe an early election would be a good idea. They can fight that battle in opposition.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, one of our viewers has written in and says, look, I just don't think immigration is an issue that's low down on the agenda for UK voters at all. I mean, the frustration is what's mounting this. I remember after 2016, I thought, right, and the polls evidence this, that immigration in the whole was viewed as an issue that was no longer that important to the British people. And it's because the British people expected there to be elements of control post-Brexit. I mean, that promise just hasn't come to light, into fruition. And actually the frustration, I'm really worried about that actually making politics almost poisoned for a generation if politicians don't actually deliver what they keep pledging to do so.
Well, that's the thing. People continue to vote for the Conservative Party as if, they're actually going to do anything. You're right. Immigration, I think, is the most pressing issue of our time in this country. It's not, and neither of the main parties are truly willing to address it in any meaningful way. Because that's the other thing, talking about a leadership election within the Conservative Party. I mean, Rishi Sunak has said that he's going to do whatever it takes to have flights going out to Rwanda. I mean, does anyone really believe that? I mean, if Suella Braverman's letter is to be believed, he doesn't care about this issue. No. And does anyone truly believe that Rishi Sunak is the type of man who has the stones to actually, truly do whatever it takes to set this issue right? I think that, his track record has shown that he is a man who regards the running of this country as basically being an exercise in management, as if he's running, he's some sort of middle manager character running a corporation, instead of in leadership, which is actually what this country needs and what it's lacked for untold decades.
I mean, Nigel, where do we go from here then? Because is this essentially just going to be a dead duck government, a zombie government for the next, whatever it might be? It could be November, the general election. So we're talking a year away from between there and now. Is this just going to be a government that can't get anything done and essentially, just frustrate and wind up the British people? It'd be their only gig.
Yeah, well, it does feel like it. I mean, I think Rwanda was a gimmick from the start because I don't think it will act as a deterrent, even if it was working.
I disagree with that. I do think it would serve as a deterrent, and I think a lot of our viewers do as well, but at least it was something though, Nigel. I mean, what are the alternatives? What else can we do?
Well, the alternatives is to actually tackle the problem properly. And the kind of thing we should be doing is obviously getting the backlog of asylum claims down. In fairness, the government is doing something on that. But the most important thing is how do you discourage people from crossing the English Channel in the first place? Now, the best way of doing that would be to have proper resettlement schemes from somewhere else. So in other words, at the moment we have a system whereby you can only claim asylum once you're on British soil. If we were able to change that, you can claim asylum elsewhere, there'd be no need to cross the Channel in the first place.
Okay. I mean, Charlie, does that frustrate you? Because the idea, that's the Labour plan, essentially, isn't it? To process asylum claims here in the country, and then that way you can get through the list of people faster, is the argument. Actually, I would argue that that's just going to encourage more people to come here.
Yeah, I agree, but I also disagree with what you said before. That I actually do agree with Nigel that this is not going to serve as a deterrent,
right?
Because I think that those people who are in Calais, they won't have heard about the Rwanda plan, and if they do hear it, ultimately, they're still going to take the chance of getting to the country in the first place, pulling up on the shore and then, sort of taking their chances. I think that anything short of, measures which prevent people arriving on the shore at all is inadequate. I think that the best policy, and many people feel this way, the best policy is to turn the boats back before they even arrive here.
I mean, Australia managed it, right? It doesn't seem to be beyond the wit of man to do it. They put them in unsinkable vessels and towed them back, essentially, and it worked wonders for Tony Abbott as Prime Minister.
And if I can just add to that, it's so mad that Britain has an illegal immigration problem because we're an island nation.
Well, indeed.
One can understand how somewhere like America has an illegal immigration problem because they have a border that's hundreds of miles long. But Britain has the story of Britain through history has been of waves of people from the continent crossing the channel to arrive on our shores seeking various different things. But I think that, Dominic Cummings this week said that any serious government could solve this problem in 3 weeks, and I completely agree with him. I think this is an entirely artificial issue that's only continuing because of a lack of will and conviction on the part of our so-called leaders.
Lots of mentions of the mafia in that particular post. But Nigel, this is an issue, a conversation that's happening not just in Britain, this is happening across the continent. And I think Rishi Sunak must be banking on having the support of Italy, Maloney, for example, of Austria and others who are saying we need to get a grip of this because migration to Europe is going to increase.
Yeah, the one thing I think we can all agree on is that, yes, we do need to get a grip of it. What no one is coming up with really is satisfactory answers. The comparison with Australia is a false one. Because Australia, that the migrants were crossing 150 miles of international waters in much bigger boats to try and turn little dinghies back to France, things that are no bigger than basically children's paddling pools, will just result in more deaths. Of course, there are no international waters between here and France anyway.
Charlie, what do you say to that then? Because that sort of snookers your plan, does it not?
I would say that, Britain has one of the greatest navies the world has ever seen, and we used it to conquer a quarter of the Earth's surface. So I think that we have more than the capacity to deal with these boats in the Channel.
Yeah. Nigel, people hearing this are just going to say, I'm tearing my hair out here because we're hearing lots of different conflicting things. This ain't going to get any better. There are going to be more people coming to Europe. I was reading today in the papers that they're talking that the Taliban are taking control of the route to get people into Europe. And people are saying this is a national security threat, right? So what on earth are we going to do about this?
Well, look, Darren, you're absolutely right. There are no short-term answers to actually dealing with this. In a sense, when it comes to the boat, we've been a bit of a victim of our own success. We've stopped migrants climbing into the back of lorries and getting through the Channel Tunnel, so they've taken to the boats instead. But no, there is no short-term fix. The answer is everyone's got to actually sit down and look for a long-term one, which is why I was talking about being able to process visas offshore. There's no reason why that should increase migration because we don't have to grant the visas. You're just saying to people, don't come here to try and get them.
Charlie, my worry is that they would just grant them, though.
Yeah, if their track record is anything to go by, I agree. Now, I do think there is a wider issue at play here that is worth discussing. Perhaps not now because it is a very, very broad issue. But it's the discussion as to why these migrants are even here in the first place. Because let's be clear here. There are a lot of people in the camps in Calais who are genuinely destitute and who have had their homes destroyed and who have been driven out of their countries because of, catastrophes and terrible things happening. Now, I think that the serious adult conversation that we need to have on this issue is actually the role that America has in all of this. Our supposed greatest ally, the supposed special relationship, actually their foreign policy measures over the last however many decades have resulted in enormous volumes of people moving from the Middle East and elsewhere into Europe. And I think that all the while America is allowed to have this sort of neocon, highly aggressive, forever war type foreign policy, this issue is not going to let up. We can do what we can to stem the tide. But ultimately, addressing the issue at source, I think, is far.
Well, that's another conversation altogether, and we'd be on for hours, I think, discussing that. But we can't, unfortunately.